What if a simple request for directions changed everything? A blind girl's question to a single dad wasn't just about getting somewhere. It was about finding an unexpected connection that would shatter his solitary world. Prepared to see how a chance encounter can open doors to profound change, pushing two strangers onto a journey neither could have foreseen. The morning came cold and gray, the kind of October day that settles into your bones before you even step outside. Marcus stood at the crosswalk on 5th and Archer, one hand gripping the stroller handle, the other rubbing his temples. His daughter Emma, barely 2, was quiet today. Too quiet, he thought, the kind of silence that meant she was getting sick again. He'd already missed 3 days of work this month. 3 days he couldn't afford to lose. The light changed. He pushed forward, head down, moving through the crowd like a man who'd learned to be invisible. His jacket was thin, the lining torn at the shoulder. His shoes were splitting at the sole, cardboard stuffed inside to cover the holes. But his daughter was warm, bundled in the only new thing he'd bought in months, a pink fleece blanket his mother had helped him pick out before she passed. The rent was due in 5 days. The daycare had sent another notice, stamped in red, final notice pay within 48 hours. He'd folded it into his pocket this morning, unable to look at it again. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. Emma stirred in the stroller, made a small whimpering sound. Marcus stopped, crouched down, checked her forehead with the back of his hand. Warm. Not burning, but warm. He closed his eyes for a moment, fighting back the panic that always came with her fevers. He didn't notice her at first. She stood at the corner of 5th and Archer, white cane moving in careful arcs across the pavement, tapping against the metal pole of the street sign, the edge of the trash can, mapping the world through sound and touch. Her face was turned slightly upward as if listening to something he couldn't hear, the rhythm of footsteps, the pattern of traffic, the particular echo of this intersection. Mid-20s maybe. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, a canvas bag over her shoulder, worn at the edges. She wore a light jacket, insufficient for the cold, and her hands looked chapped from the wind. She looked lost but not panicked, more like someone who'd learned to be lost with grace. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but clear, directed toward the general space where people passed. "I'm trying to get to the community center on Maple. Can you point me in the right direction?" Marcus stopped, irritation flashing hot in his chest before he could control it. He didn't have time for this. Emma was getting sick. He was already late. His supervisor had made it clear that another absence would mean termination. The world was already asking too much, taking too much, demanding more than he had to give. It's 4 blocks that way," he said, gesturing uselessly before catching himself, remembering she couldn't see him. "East, 4 blocks east, then 2 blocks north." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was something fragile in her expression, like glass held together by willpower alone. "I'm not great with directions like that. Is it far to walk?" He looked at her cane, at the way she held herself, steady but uncertain, independent but vulnerable. He looked at the sky, at the dark clouds gathering overhead, threatening rain within the hour. He thought about the final notice in his pocket, about Emma's fever, about the few minutes he had left, the small margin between being late and being fired. He thought about walking away, but something in her voice stopped him, something that sounded like goodbye. "It's about 15 minutes, he said instead, the words coming out before he could stop them. I can walk you part way. I'm heading that direction." It was a lie. He wasn't heading that direction at all. The warehouse was south, opposite from Maple Street. This would cost him 20 minutes, maybe 30 by the time he backtracked. But she looked so small standing there, so alone. "Are you sure?" she asked, and there was something in her voice, hope mixed with hesitation, like someone who'd learned not to expect kindness. "I don't want to be a burden." "It's fine," he said, more gruffly than he intended. "Come on, before it rains," and they started walking. "Would you have stopped? Even if you were late, even if your daughter was sick, even if stopping might cost you your job?" They moved in silence at first, the stroller wheels clicking over the uneven sidewalk, a steady rhythm that filled the space between words. She moved beside him with surprising confidence, her cane finding obstacles before they became problems. A raised section of concrete, a newspaper box, a cluster of pigeons pecking at crumbs. The rhythm of their steps fell into sync without trying. The city moved around them, car horns, distant sirens, the hiss of a bus pulling away from the curb. Marcus was aware of every minute passing, of the warehouse getting further away, of his supervisor's face when he clocked in late again. But he kept walking. "Thank you for this," she said after a block, her voice almost lost in the street noise. "I know you probably have somewhere to be. It's fine." He cleared his throat, uncomfortable with gratitude. "You go to the community center often?" "Tuesdays and Thursdays. They have a support group there. For people with visual impairments." She paused, her cane tapping against a fire hydrant, adjusting her path slightly to move around it, "and other things. It helps, sometimes." Emma made a small sound from the stroller, a quiet coo that broke into a cough. Marcus stopped immediately, checking on her, adjusting her blanket. The woman tilted her head toward the sound, her expression softening. "You have a little one with you," she said, and it wasn't a question. "My daughter, Emma. She's almost 2. Just you?" Marcus felt his jaw tighten, the familiar defensiveness rising in his chest. Everyone asked eventually. Everyone wanted to know where the mother was, why he was doing this alone, what had gone wrong. "Yeah, just us," she nodded, something understanding in the gesture, no judgment in her silence. "That must be hard, being everything to someone that's small." He didn't answer. No one had said it like that before, being everything. It felt too accurate, too heavy to acknowledge out loud. He was everything to Emma, her mother, her father, her whole world. And most days he felt like he was failing at all of it. They continued walking, past the bodega where he bought day-old bread, past the laundromat where he spent Sunday mornings, past the playground where he took Emma when she wasn't sick, when he wasn't too exhausted to push her on the swings. "What's her name?" the woman asked. "You said Emma?" "Yeah, Emma Rose, after my mother." "That's beautiful." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "I bet she loves you more than anything in the world." Marcus felt something crack in his chest, a fissure in the armor he'd built around himself. "I hope so. I'm trying my best, but—" He stopped himself. Why was he telling this stranger his fears? "Sorry, you don't need to hear this. Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone you don't know," she said gently. "No history, no expectations. Just 2 people walking." They turned onto Maple, and she slowed, listening for something specific. At the intersection, the crosswalk signal began its rhythmic chirping, a sound designed for people like her. She smiled slightly. "I can hear the fountain. The center is close, isn't it? On the left side?" "Yeah." He stopped walking, suddenly reluctant to end this strange interlude, this brief connection with another human being who wasn't demanding something from him. "You'll be okay from here?" She smiled again, and this time it was genuine, reaching her eyes. "I'll be fine." "Thank you, really. You didn't have to do this." "It's nothing," he said, and he meant it. It was such a small thing, 20 minutes of his already broken day. She reached out her hand, fingers searching the air. He took it, surprised by the warmth of her palm, the firmness of her grip. Her hands were small but strong, calloused in places that spoke of a life lived without sight, of learning to navigate through touch. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus. I'm Sophia." "Thank you, Marcus." She paused, squeezed his hand once. "For saying my name when you spoke to me. For not just leaving me there." The words hung in the air, specific and strange, like she meant something deeper. Before he could respond, she turned and made her way toward the building, her cane tapping the steps, counting them aloud softly. 1, 2, 3, until she reached the door. He watched until she disappeared inside. Then he turned the stroller around and headed back the way he'd came, now seriously late, soaked with the first drops of rain, wondering why his chest felt tight. 3 weeks passed like water through his hands. Emma's fever broke, returned, finally disappeared. Marcus picked up an extra shift at the warehouse, came home too tired to eat, collapsed on the couch with his daughter sleeping on his chest. The memory of the blind woman faded into the background, just another moment in a city of millions. He thought he'd never see her again. He was wrong. The letter came on a Tuesday, heavy paper, professional envelope. The return address, Hutchins and Reeve, LLP. Marcus stared at it for 5 minutes, his mind racing through every terrible possibility. Debt collectors, child services, Sarah filing for custody. But the letter was brief. We request your presence for a matter regarding your recent interaction with Miss Sophia Chen. Ms. Chen would like to thank you personally. Thursday, 2 p.m. He called the number. The receptionist confirmed but wouldn't explain further. Marcus read the letter again. Then again, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. A law firm downtown didn't send invitations to people like him. A law firm downtown sent warnings, court dates, eviction notices. He picked up his phone, thumb hovering over the warehouse number. Just looking at it made his stomach twist. If he called in sick again, he might as well hand over his badge. If he didn't go, he'd spend the next month waiting for the other shoe to drop. Emma coughed in the next room, soft, sleepy, but enough to spike his panic. He closed his eyes and pictured the daycare lady shaking her head, the red stamp on the notice, the words he couldn't unsee. Pay within 48 hours. He dialed the number on the letter instead. Thank you for calling Hutchins and Reeve, LLP, a woman said, calm as polished marble. How may I direct your call? This is Marcus Hayes, he said, voice low, like saying his name too loudly would get him arrested. I have an appointment Thursday at 2. I just wanted to ask what this is about. I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes, she replied smoothly. We can't discuss details over the phone. Can I reschedule? He asked quickly, hating how desperate he sounded. I work, I can't. There was a pause. Not long, just long enough to feel like judgment. Mr. Hutchins asked that you come in person, she said. And Miss Chun specifically requested Thursday. Miss Chun. His throat went dry. The blind woman, Sophia. Am I in trouble? Marcus whispered. No, the receptionist said, softer now. You're not in trouble. But please don't miss this meeting. After the call ended, Marcus sat at his kitchen table until the light outside faded and the apartment turned the color of old paper. Then he stared at the daycare notice one more time and made a choice. Thursday came. Marcus called in sick to the warehouse, knowing he couldn't afford to miss the shift, knowing he couldn't afford not to find out what this was about. He dropped Emma at his neighbor's place, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had 3 kids of her own and didn't mind one more for a few hours. You look stressed, Mio, she said, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. Everything okay? I don't know, he admitted. I'll find out. He put on his only button-down shirt, the one with the frayed collar he tried to hide with his jacket, polished his splitting shoes with a rag and some water, which helped for about 5 minutes before the scuffs reappeared. He took 2 buses downtown because the subway was faster but cost $2 more, and $2 was $2. The building was glass and steel, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces that made him feel small. Inside, the marble floors echoed with every step. The receptionist directed him to the 7th floor, conference room C, handing him a visitor badge that clipped to his collar like a brand. The mirrored elevator showed him what he already knew. He didn't belong here. The ride-up felt like falling. The conference room was bigger than his entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a view that probably cost more than he'd make in a year. A table that could seat 20, polished to a mirror shine. Leather chairs. Abstract art on the walls, splashes of color that meant nothing to him but probably cost thousands. And at the far end, 2 people waiting. An older man in a gray suit that fit perfectly, and Sophia. She looked different here. Professional. Composed. Put together in a way that made the woman he'd met at the corner seem like a different person entirely. Her dark hair was down, falling in waves past her shoulders. She wore a navy dress, simple but elegant, paired with a blazer that matched. There was a white cane folded on the table beside her. When he entered, she turned her head toward the sound of his footsteps, listening for his approach, and she smiled, the same genuine smile from that day. "Marcus," she said softly, warmth in her voice. His heart was pounding. "What's going on?" The man in the suit stood, extending his hand across the table. "Mr. Hayes, I'm David Hutchins. Please, sit down." I know this must be confusing. Marcus sat in the leather chair, feeling like an imposter. His eyes never left Sophia, searching for answers. "I don't understand. Did I do something wrong?" "No," Sophia said quickly, leaning forward slightly. "No, Marcus, you didn't do anything wrong. The opposite, actually." David Hutchins opened a folder, sliding a document slightly toward center table. "Mr. Hayes, 3 weeks ago on October 7th, you encountered Miss Chen at the intersection of 5th and Archer Street. Is that correct?" Yeah, I just gave her directions. Walked her partway to the community center. "You took 20 minutes out of your day," Sophia said, and there was something in her voice now, emotion barely contained, words carefully chosen. "When you were already late, when you had your daughter with you and it was about to rain. You didn't have to. Most people wouldn't have. But you did." Marcus shifted in his chair, uncomfortable under their scrutiny. "It wasn't a big deal. Anyone would have." "No," Sophia interrupted gently but firmly. "Not anyone. I stood on that corner for 20 minutes before you stopped. 12 people passed me. 12. Some ignored me completely. Some gave me vague directions and kept walking. You were the only one who actually helped." The room felt too warm. Marcus pulled at his collar, feeling sweat forming at his hairline. Sophia continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "That day was," she paused, swallowed hard, composed herself. "That day was the 3-year anniversary of my accident, the day I lost my sight. I was going to the community center, but not for the support group." Marcus felt his breath catch. "I was going to sign out, to tell them I was done. And then I was going to walk to the Morrison Bridge." She paused. "I had it all mapped out in my head, every step, every turn. I'd been planning it for weeks." The words fell like stones in the quiet room. "But then you stopped. You didn't just give me directions and walk away. You walked with me. You told me about Emma, about being scared of failing her, about trying your best even when it didn't feel like enough." Marcus couldn't form words. His throat was too tight. "You reminded me, without even knowing it, that there are still people in this world who see others, really see them, even when they're invisible. You reminded me that kindness still exists, that connection still matters, that maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought." A tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "You saved my life, Marcus, and I want to give you something in return. But I need you to understand, this isn't charity. It's a choice, your choice." The room spun. Marcus gripped the edge of the table. What came next would change his answer to every question he'd been asking. David Hutchins pulled out several documents. Ms. Chun is the founder and CEO of Clearview Technologies. They develop assistive devices and software for people with visual impairments. screen readers, navigation apps, tactile interfaces. The company went public last year. Marcus looked at the paper but couldn't focus. I can't accept money. I didn't do it for. It's not money, Sophia interrupted gently. Not directly. It's an opportunity, but it comes in steps, Marcus. I'm not going to wave a magic wand and fix everything. That wouldn't be real. And it wouldn't last. She took a breath. First, the immediate. Emma's medical needs. I'd like to cover her next 3 appointments and get her in with Dr. Martinez in pediatrics. He has evening hours, takes new patients. No strings. That's done, regardless of what you decide next. Marcus felt his eyes burning. Second, David added, we have a legal partner who specializes in debt negotiation. They can help you settle your medical bills and work out a realistic payment plan for the daycare arrears. That's also done. Consider it handled. Why? Marcus whispered. Because those are emergencies, Sophia said simply. And you can't think clearly when you're drowning. So we stopped the bleeding first. She leaned forward. But here's where your choice comes in. We have an opening in our community outreach division, entry level, working with nonprofits and community centers to connect people with our technology. The salary is $48,000 a year to start. Full health benefits for you and Emma, including preventive care and chronic illness management. Marcus couldn't breathe. But, Sophia continued, I'm not just handing you a job. You need to go through our standard interview process, meet with the department head, do a trial day, show us you can do the work. And then, if it's a fit, you'd start with a 3-month paid training period. You'd have a mentor, you'd learn the systems. You'd prove to yourself, not to me, that you belong there. And if I fail? Marcus asked, his voice breaking. Then we help you find something else, Sophia said. The medical coverage and debt help? Those don't go away. But the job? That's something you have to earn. Not because I don't trust you, but because you need to trust yourself. David slid another paper across. There's also a housing assistance program we partner with. Once you're employed for 90 days, you qualify for their 2-bedroom units. Rent is scaled to about 30% of your income. It's not a handout. It's a program designed for working families. You'd apply like everyone else. Marcus put his head in his hands, tears streaming down his face. Why? He whispered again. Why are you doing this? Because sometimes, Sophia said, her voice steady now, a small gesture is worth more than the person making it could ever imagine. You gave me 20 minutes when you didn't have 20 minutes to give. You shared your fears with a stranger. You reminded me that I wasn't just my disability, that I was still a person worth seeing. She reached across the table, her hand finding his, listening for the sound of his breathing to guide her. I almost threw away everything that day. My company. My life. The chance to help thousands of people who struggle the way I do. You stopped me. Not with grand gestures or inspiring speeches, just with basic human decency. And now I want to give you the chance you gave me, the chance to breathe, to stop drowning, to build something better. She squeezed his hand. But I need you to build it, Marcus. I can open the door. You have to walk through it. Marcus looked at the documents through his tears, at the interview date, at the training schedule, at the possibility of a future he'd stopped believing was real. What do I have to do? He asked. David pushed a single paper forward. Sign here to accept the medical coverage and debt assistance. Those start immediately. Then show up for your interview next Tuesday at 10 a.m. The rest is up to you. Marcus's hand shook as he picked up the pen. He signed. 6 months later, Marcus stood at the same corner where he'd first met Sophia, 5th and Archer. The October air was cold again, but this time he had a real jacket, thick and warm. Good shoes. Emma, now healthy and thriving, sat in a better stroller, bundled in the same pink fleece blanket from before. Some things you keep. The interview had been terrifying. He'd stumbled through answers, sure he'd blown it. But the department head, A woman named Keisha, who'd grown up in his neighborhood, had seen something in him. "You know what it's like to need help," she'd said. "That's the only qualification that really matters here." The 3-month training had been brutal. Learning databases, assistive technology specs, grant applications, community partnerships. His mentor, James, had been patient but firm. "You're not here because Sophia feels sorry for you," he'd said during week 2 when Marcus had almost quit. "You're here because you have something we need. Now let's figure out what that is." Week 4, they sent him out for the first time. Not alone, James came with him, but it still felt like stepping onto a stage with no script. The community center was loud and understaffed, a line of parents wrapped down the hallway, kids tugging sleeves, phones ringing, someone arguing at the front desk about paperwork. Marcus stood there with a tablet in his hand and a Clearview badge on his chest, and for a moment he wanted to rip it off. A mother approached him, eyes tired, one hand gripping her son's shoulder like she was afraid he might disappear. The boy was maybe 8, squinting hard at the fluorescent lights, blinking like it hurt to look at anything at all. "I was told you could help," she said. "He can't read the board at school. They keep saying he's distracted. But he's trying. He's really trying." Marcus opened his mouth and nothing came out. James leaned in, quiet. "Start with a question," he said. "Not a solution," Marcus swallowed. "What's his name?" "Luis," the mother answered. Marcus crouched so he was level with the boy. "Hey, Luis, does it get worse in bright light or dim light?" Luis hesitated, then nodded. "Bright? It stings." Marcus looked up at the buzzing lights overhead. Moldy ceiling tiles. Budget cuts you could see. He remembered Sophia's voice, something that sounded like goodbye. He remembered Emma's fevers. Remembered how it felt when adults talked over you like you weren't there. "Okay," Marcus said, steady now. "We're going to make school easier. Not tomorrow, today." And when the mother's shoulders sagged in relief, when she looked at him like he'd just handed her oxygen, Marcus finally understood what James meant. He wasn't pretending anymore. He was becoming the bridge. And slowly, he had. Now he spent his days visiting community centers, hospitals, schools for the blind. He helped families navigate the complex world of assistive technology, connected them to resources, advocated for people who felt invisible. He was good at it. Better than he'd expected, because he understood what it felt like to be drowning, to need help and be too proud to ask for it. Last month, he'd moved into the 2-bedroom apartment. Not fancy, but clean. Safe. With a playground Emma could reach without crossing a major intersection. The rent was $720, right around 30% of his take-home pay. He'd cried the day he signed the lease. Emma saw Dr. Martinez now for regular checkups. Her coughs had cleared up. She was gaining weight, learning words, laughing more than she cried. Marcus slept through the night. Most nights anyway. He saw Sophia sometimes at company events. They'd have coffee afterward, talk about the people they'd helped that week. Last month, she told him about the Morrison Bridge, exactly where she'd planned to climb over the railing, exactly what she'd been thinking before he'd appeared. "We saved each other," she'd said simply. "That's how it works sometimes." Now, standing at the corner where it all started, Marcus watched the crowd move past. Everyone locked in their own worlds, their own struggles, their own survival. He saw her before she saw him, a woman standing alone, looking lost, an old map in her hands despite the rain starting to fall. She glanced around, clearly overwhelmed, clearly hoping someone would stop. Most people walked past. Marcus pushed the stroller toward her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "You look like you might need some help." "Where are you trying to go?" She looked up, relief flooding her face. "I'm trying to find Lincoln Memorial Hospital. My mother's there, and I took the wrong bus." "I know where it is," Marcus said, and he smiled. "It's about a 20-minute walk from here, but I can show you. I'm heading that direction anyway." It was a lie. he wasn't heading that direction at all. But some lies are worth telling, because small gestures don't stay small. They ripple outward like stones in water, touching shores you never knew existed. And sometimes, when you give someone directions, you find your own way home. If this story reminded you that one moment of kindness can change two lives, like, share, and subscribe to Heartline Stories, because your support helps us find and share more stories like Marcus and Sophia's.